Naomi is pregnant. Fantastic news. Really, really great for her and for Big Jim. All the love in the world going to him. But it does mean we are soon going to be without a women's world champion. And that is sort of a shame because Naomi was really building up a great run. I was never a big fan of Naomi. I just felt like she wasn't really great in the ring and didn't have a character I could really connect with. But ever since winning the title at Evolution, she's really been fantastic. I feel like her confidence is through the roof. She's incredible on the mic. I loved her triple threat at SummerSlam. I've really been a big fan of everything she's done. So now to sort of see this title reign get cut short, it's a little bit of a disappointment. But she's having a kid, so I can't be that upset about it. And now we get to have the conversation about who should replace her as the women's world champion. Who is going to be the next person to win that belt? And I've got 10 possibilities lined up, 10 potential fantasy booking picks. Now, this isn't exactly what I think is going to happen. I think realistically, it's probably three names are most likely to win the title. But it's always fun to throw some real outside contenders in there just to sort of get some, flex our fantasy booking chops a little bit, which I like to do on this channel. So we're going to go through 10 different names of people who have potential to win the world title and the stories that would get them to that point. If you guys like the video, please consider subscribing, leaving a like, leaving a comment, as it really, really does help a new channel like mine to succeed. But with all of that being said, I am Isaiah from Hot Tag Wrestling, and let's go ahead and get into it with number 10. So first we're going to be talking about Becky Lynch, the current Women's Intercontinental Champion. The reason that this idea popped into my mind is mainly so we can get another run at Becky 2 belts, but this time being a proper heel. The original run started as a babyface and then started incorporating more heel elements, but never fully turned heel. So it was sort of this weird in between after WrestleMania 35, leading up to her pregnancy and her dropping the title, that we just never really got a full fleshed out character. And I feel like this is an opportunity to have Becky as the dominant force on Raw. And if her character is, I want to put the thumb on other women in the division, I want to make sure no one else can get ahead, I feel like this would be an effective way to do it. To give her both belts to really show her domineering over the competition. And then you could potentially run a story with Lyra Valkyria again in a couple months where she is now trying to upset Becky for the world title. You could have her immediately back in the mix with Rhea and with Io, who she's done really good work with in the past. Some of the newer names like Roxanne and Stephanie could get in there as well. I just think if Becky is on top, there's a lot of possibilities for interesting feuds and interesting matches, as well as furthering the character she's already developing on screen. At number 9, we're going to talk about Bianca Belair. And she's out currently with an injury she sustained at WrestleMania 41. She broke a couple of her fingers. So I don't know how likely this one is. I don't know her estimated time of return to the ring. But I feel like it works with a story that they're setting up for when Naomi could come back in late 2026 or whenever it'll be, where Bianca sort of swoops in after she's gone and takes up the title. And you could either play it as Naomi being the cocky heel saying, well, you couldn't have beat me for that title. You could only do it when I was away having a baby. Or you could sort of play on the Bianca Jade story a little bit, where Jade failed to capture the title at SummerSlam after winning Queen of the Ring, and Bianca comes in and in her first match back wins the title, and you could brew a little bit of jealousy there. Now, Bianca is normally on SmackDown, so removing her from the SmackDown roster sort of leaves a little bit of a void there, so you might want to take a few people over from Raw and plant them over there. But I feel like this would be an effective way to continue the Bianca, Naomi, Jade storyline, if that is something they are interested in continuing. Stephanie Vaquer was originally set to take on Naomi at Clash in Paris for the title. And I don't necessarily think she was originally slated to win. I think Naomi was always going to be the victor in that case. And I think that if they want to pivot, a lot will be centered around what they are doing at Clash in Paris, specifically with Stephanie Vaquer. I think it would be interesting to put Stephanie in a singles match for the title and have her lose the title to JC Jane, the person who beat her for the NXT Women's Champion, and having JC be this really dominant double champion. Um, I feel like that would work in storyline because they're always presenting JC as the person who no one thinks is going to succeed but continues finding success, mostly through her heel tactics, but also by subverting people's expectations by how legitimately good she is in the ring. And I feel like this would be the ultimate pinnacle of that storyline where she comes up to the main roster and in one of her first outings wins the Women's World Championship. And now this character is cemented both in NXT and on the main roster of I am this person who blows everyone's expectations out of the water. I also think that would set up an interesting story with Stephanie going forward of sort of like how Rhea can't beat Io, Stephanie can't beat JC Jane. And Stephanie being one of the best wrestlers in the world, and then JC being this person who isn't really taken seriously, and after losing these titles will probably go to the mid card. Stephanie being a main eventer, not being able to upset this ghost from her past in situations when it really, really matters is an interesting story that you can implement into her career going forward. I don't think that they would necessarily have that much confidence in JC to put her in that lofty position straight away, but I think it would sort of suit the character and the story they are telling with her down in NXT and potentially add an interesting wrinkle to Stephanie Vaquer's character going forward. For number six, I am, for this one, imagining that rather than doing a singles match at Clash in Paris for the title, they do a battle royal. And the last two participants are Stephanie Vaquer and Chelsea Green. And Chelsea Green works with the Secret Harvest to eliminate Stephanie and become the world champion. I feel like this is once again sort of a prize for Chelsea being so great on TV for as long as she has been. I'm not the biggest fan of hers in ring, but she is undoubtedly very entertaining when she's on the mic and when she's given opportunities to express her character. And I feel like now doing that at the top of the card and having everyone else chase her could be an interesting story to see how far can we truly push this character. You've had a lot of success in the undercard, wrestling Michin, in the mid card as the United States champion, and now let's see what you can do as the world champion. I think it would be a unique opportunity for her to see how far this character could really go. For number six, we're going back to NXT and we are talking about Blake Monroe. I think this would be interesting because it's been a while since we've really seen them put the Jets on someone right from the beginning of their time in WWE. The last time I can really think of it would be AJ Styles when he debuted and was champion, world champ within like a year of his debut. Main roster success right out of the gate is not something we often see with wrestlers in the modern age. So I feel like Blake Monroe coming in as this star, establishing a character in NXT, and then sort of bypassing that and jumping up to the main roster to win a world title would be very suiting of her character, thinking that she is the best and she deserves the best all the time. And the current feud she's in with Jordan Grace isn't worth her time when she could be a world champion instead. And her winning what I would have be a fatal, not a fatal four way, a triple threat match with a superstar from Raw, wrestler from SmackDown, and then Blake Monroe representing NXT. Maybe even her match with Jordan Grace could be a number one contenders match for that triple threat in Clash in Paris. I think that it would be really refreshing to see WWE completely back someone in a big way and push them as the top star of a division pretty much immediately. So fans, it would differentiate her from a lot of other wrestlers who have to build themselves up over time, like we're seeing now with Roxanne and Julia and Stephanie and Lyra, of how they're having to build stories over time to build the trust in them. To sort of just snap your fingers and have Blake be the world champion not only would be really, really refreshing for the fans, but also really, really suiting of her character. For number 5, we are going to talk about Lyra Valkyria, someone who has really been a pivotal part of the Raw Women's division over the past year or so as Intercontinental Champion. She was sort of plodding along for a little bit, just having good matches on Raw until she got into this Bayley Becky Lynch feud at the beginning of this year. And she has just been a main event pivotal figure ever since then. So I feel like putting her in this spot not only is a reward for everything she's done, but is also earned because she should be in that top brass with Rhea and with Io on Raw as one of the top stars, and giving her the world champion elevates her from this young, plucky mid-carder into a main event talent. And that is something that could help her for a long, long time. And I think it could also spawn an interesting story with both Bayley and Becky Lynch, probably a little bit later down the line, because you want to give some time in between the end of the feud for the IC Championship and the beginning for the World Championship. But Becky is trying to sort of drag down other talent and step ahead of them to put herself ahead. So she thought she has gotten rid of Lyra Valkyria to win the Intercontinental Championship, and then looks and she's gone and won the world championship. And Bayley, alternatively, who's been really struggling to pick up wins and really can't get any momentum behind her, sees this person who is essentially her protege and her underling supersede her in so many ways and get to the world championship title picture. I feel you could have interesting stories going there, and really anyone you throw in the ring with Lyra will have a good match, good feud. So I think that there's a lot of possibilities and a lot of unique storytelling opportunities if Lyra is made world champion. For number 4, we are going to talk about Asuka, someone who has sort of not really been a pivotal player in Raw recently, mainly tagging with Kairi Sane in the Kabuki Warriors. I think that mainly the reason I would give Asuka the title is to continue the dissension of Damage Control and potentially put a rift in between a relationship between Rhea Ripley and Io Sky. That relationship we're sort of seeing form on TV recently. If you are going to go with Rhea and Io as a tag team, potentially making them tag champs, then having Asuka on top, sort of trying to create a schism in between the two of them, would make for an interesting storyline, especially if we get 3 or 4 months down the line and Rhea and Io are both looking to find the number 1 contendership position to face Asuka. It just creates a lot of really interesting dynamics that I feel like they are going to explore eventually, but putting the world title on Asuka in order to explore those dynamics is sort of a way to give it a little bit more gravity. The storytelling direction I feel they're going down right now is to make Rhea and Io, eventually called Rio probably, the tag team champs, and then just have Asuka break them up just for the sake of trying to get Io for herself on her side. But having the world championship in there as well, having Asuka be the top champ and sort of trying to pull Io back to her side in order to protect her title run and in order to make sure Rhea can't challenge her for the title, really creates a new interesting dynamic as Asuka sort of being this crafty manipulator for Kairi and Io, and presents Rhea as a really, really dominant threat. And Asuka's also just incredible. Like, whoever she steps in the ring with, she'll have a really, really great match with. So I feel like there's a lot of interesting story developments if Asuka is made the top champ, even if I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. At the start of the video, I said there was really 3 contenders for this title, 3 people who I realistically think could win this championship. And we're starting that list with number 3, which is Rhea Ripley. She's always in contendership for a world title, so it wouldn't really make sense to put her that low on the list. It's sort of like in case of an emergency, pull Rhea Ripley ripcord, and she just sort of is always able to immediately elevate herself to the top of the card. I honestly don't know if there's too many interesting stories that you could spawn with Rhea being the top champ, because her building a dynamic with Io, they have to be equals in order for that to work, and Rhea being the champ doesn't really work. Asuka being jealous of Io wouldn't really work if Rhea was champ, and I just don't know what unique stories there are to tell with Rhea that you couldn't tell with someone else. So she's at number 3 because I feel like she is one of the more likely candidates to become the champion, just because she's such a trustworthy hand. And in an emergency like this, when you need to crown a new champ, why not go with Rhea? Everyone loves her. She's very credible as a champion. There's sort of no reason to not think she can do it. But I just don't feel like it's the most interesting option for them to go with. What I do feel would be a little bit more interesting than seeing Rhea as a champ would be seeing Io as a champ again. Sort of in the same boat as Rhea, super, super credible. You can put a world title on her at any time, and it'll be believable regardless of what story she is telling at the moment. The reason I would like Io versus Rhea more is because the story they're telling of Rhea being unable to get the big win over Io when it really counts works more if Io is the top champ, similar to their dynamic at Evolution. And I feel like if Io is top champ, continuing to push the jealousy angle with Kairi and Asuka would just be furthered by her having this championship. I feel like it makes a lot more sense to have Io on top, and the stories that they are currently telling and they currently have in place would just be elevated by her becoming the top champ. So even if it's not the most original choice and wouldn't shake things up or create as many story possibilities as some of the lower candidates on this list, I feel like it is one of the most likely and one of the most logical storytelling directions for them to take. And we are going to finish up this list by talking about the number 1 candidate for the women's world title, also the current number 1 contender for the women's world title, Stephanie Vaquer. What I would do to give Stephanie the title is at Clash in Paris, I would have, surprise, surprise, a triple threat match with Stephanie versus Io Sky versus Rhea Ripley. You know it's going to be a banger match because Rhea and Io always have banger matches together, either singles like at Evolution or in triple threats like at Mania, like at SummerSlam. So to put another one here, you're guaranteeing a great match. And for Stephanie to win by either pinning Rhea or Io, I would have her pin Rhea in this instance, instantly elevates her from being someone who's sort of on the up, but a lot of people think she's still going to have another couple months before she truly finds her form as a main eventer, maybe a Royal Rumble contender, to push her into that top spot over the top stars on Raw just sort of speaks to her credibility, because she has this aura about her where she feels like a champion. She feels like she belongs as a top champ. So to have her sort of just going in the mid card a little bit and not really having a clear storyline direction has sort of been a little bit disappointing. So to elevate her to the world champion position, it would work for Stephanie's character, just being the uber confident person that she is. And it would sort of put the rest of the division on notice that Stephanie, who just came up from NXT, is here to dominate the division. And if you sort of do a long domineering reign like Asuka in NXT, and you start counting up her victories over, not just lower card players, but Roxanne Perez, Lyra Valkyria, those sort of up and comers, Rhea, Io, Becky, Bailey, those established stars. If you start racking up victories like that, you're going to cement her for a long, long time as a top star, similarly to how you did with Rhea Ripley when she was in the Judgment Day. So I think it really makes all the sense in the world to go with Stephanie as your top champ now. The only argument I could see against it is that it sort of feels like a pivot, and their original plan was maybe not to make Stephanie the top champ and it was to continue on with Naomi and eventually make Stephanie a champ and a main eventer. So her going in here now, she didn't actually, she wasn't due for it. She didn't deserve it. Maybe some of her detractors would say. I don't agree with that take at all, but that is sort of a sentiment that could be put up against her. But I think she is so good, and if booked properly in a lengthy title run, at least going up to Mania, you could silence that doubt and you could really form a top star in your women's division for a decade to come. And those are my 10 possibilities for who will become the next women's world champion after Naomi. Once again, all the love to Naomi, sending all the love to her and Big Jim. Let me know what you guys thought down in the comments below. Was there one person on this list who maybe my fantasy booking or maybe your own fantasy booking ideas for them really stood out as being the person who should dethrone, or I guess not dethrone, but take the vacant title for the Women's World Championship? Let me know down in the comments below. Let me know if there's anyone I left off the list who I should have put into more consideration for this spot. And I want to know your own fantasy booking ideas. Who do you want to see walk away as Women's World Champion after Clash in Paris? Let me know down below. While you're there, leave a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, all the good stuff that really does help a new channel like mine to succeed. I want to thank you guys so much for watching and all the continued support. I have been Isaiah from Hot Tag Wrestling, and as always, I'll see you guys next time.